Good morning, folks. Good morning. This is Spirit Journey, and today is October 2, 2020, and the time is 8:27 a.m. Yes, it is a dreary looking day. Yes, I think it's actually raining outside. I hope your day is going well. I want to talk about a sensitive issue. Yeah, wow, I entitled this video about karma and what does racism smell like. It's really combining the two. And I'm long-winded, guys. So the answer in the beginning is going to be with your children, loved ones, stick together and teach them how to be confident, teach them a skill, and that no matter what, you stand your ground in a nutshell, and that what you do to others can fall back on you multiple, folded many times. So treat people how you want to be treated. And I think in all what I have to say, that whether does racism exist or doesn't exist, you know that if you stand your ground and network within the group that you are socially attached to, whether it's by religion or race, nationality, whatever, you need to come together and you need to network and you need to love one another. So if any of those things are missing, you're going to probably have a problem. So let me begin. I had an opportunity to, uh, I saw someone over social media from my very far past. And it was very surprising. I think about this person on and off over the years. This person actually was someone that I knew. They were actually my first college friend. And they seemed like a very nice person at the time. But as time went on, excuse me, I saw that, well, this other person was from another country. And I would say that was a big component. When someone is coming from another country into the United States, and at the time in New York City, New York City has great variety of people, but it's very striated and it's socially very segregated, especially when I first started out in the early 40s. I mean, early 80s, excuse me, the early 1980s. Um, Karma. I think what I learned about this person is about karma. Now, this person was from another country. They're black people. They were a black individual. They were just a little older than me. And coming to the United States, people learn right up front, especially if you come from a what do you call it? A not the caste system, but a class system society. And then when you come to the U.S., that you want to hook up with a social class to advance yourself. Now, in a class society, you can move up or down. In a caste society, no, you're stuck there. But in a class society, and you're coming from outside in, you see the social structures for what they are, and you choose. And this person chose wanted to live in a particular lifestyle. And even though I was born here, I did not understand classism and racism, but I always smelt it. And I didn't have a word from it. I'm not, my background is not from America's South. Now, I think if I was from the South, that component, I would, when you're raised in a society like in the South 40 or more years ago, you knew where your place was and you understood exactly what the problem is. But being born up north and you're around a lot of people, yes, so good morning, viewers, good morning. Just getting started, really. Yeah, I'm sharing elements from my past, but I want to be very, very discreet about it because I speak these things not to, I don't want to offend the other person, but I still felt for a learning example for many of us, many black people, or people of color, or anyone who's in a non majority social position, wherever what country they live in. But to share what the dynamics, what's happening. So this person that I know, they aspire to um, live a high status lifestyle. And I saw how, well, one thing about them, they were very focused, very, very focused. Well, I would say myself, because of the smell of racism, and again, not understanding the dynamics because I was born up north and living in a very diversified school system. Yeah, all of us, junior high school was, especially high school, was extremely diversified. And I had a false sense of security in the school because we all got along. And I got along, I never had a racist incident targeted against me by a white person. So, we all got along. And when I entered into the adult world, meaning you got a job and went to college, what's expected out of you, and the types of things that you're going to be exposed to. So when you're at a job and you have to work with people, well, in this case, white people, that now you're going to face certain things. But anyway, with this, I'll really get back to that component about the workforce. But this person that I knew, okay, she was my first person I really met at the school we exchanged telephone numbers. We used to talk over the phone, and she lived in a different borough. She lived she lived in one of the outer boroughs, and I lived in Queens. I lived in a house. I think she lived in an apartment. But they later did move to another, out of state, but nearby, and they lived in a house. But when I remember um, we were exiting the school building, the college where we met at, and she asked me a pointed question. I wish I remember what the question was, but it's something of a racial issue. And I remember her response was to my question, I mean, to my answer to a question, that I should meet her sister because she thinks the same way I do. And I didn't know what that's supposed to have meant. And again, it's something that I didn't bring up. I didn't bring up anything about racism, and she did. She was she seemed very, very pleasant. She was very outgoing. And let's see. Yeah, I did meet. Yeah, she invited me over her home, and she wanted. Yeah, in hindsight, she wanted. I had very large eyes back then, and I wore makeup. She wanted. She invited me over her home, which was out of state, and so she can show me to her mom that when I would talk, she was mentioned something about my eyes, and so I was really animated. I was happy to meet the person's mother, and then I see her elbowing her mom when I got excited because I got more expressful. But either way, it was fun. It was fun hanging out, um, and then I met this sibling of hers, and right away, the other person was very friendly, and we're heading to their house on this occasion. The other sibling came from behind and followed us, and then started talking, and so they introduce, the my friend introduces me to her her sibling. I'm sorry, my voice. So um, so we get to the house, their house, and then everybody's all chatty and everything, and my friend leaves the room, and she never comes back. What was happening? The two siblings compete for friends, it turned out. And the person thought, I was just being polite to the whole their family, because I'm a guest in their house. Um, she didn't like, oh, she felt insecure. She felt that because I was talking to the sister, we were all talking, that the other person won her over the other sibling, and that wasn't the case. A friend is a friend. I took friendships very serious. So she had excused herself from the room. I thought she just had to go to the ladies' room or something. But she never came back, and I would say, hey, where did so and so go? How come she's not coming back? So I find like with certain groups, ethnic groups, it's very, very, very competitive. Competitive for attention, competitive for friends, and you have some households would try to what they call take people's friends away from them. And unfortunately, I'm in the middle and not knowing this dynamics. Never experienced anything like that. But what I learned about the family, I don't know how long they lived in the country, in the U.S. at the time, but they were moving upwards and um, upwards socially. They would pool their monies together. And after a certain amount of time, when they pool the money, that one person would be able to collect all the money. So it was almost like a loan. You pool in the monies, and then when it's your turn to collect all the money, you would get all the money. So it was a way of helping each other, and it worked very well for them. And they, I guess, used their like back in those days, people had gotten like financial aid for college, and so I think some of that money went and pooled into that system. Uh, so I see then with them that they were very focused also on money, very money oriented. And so, how do I, yeah, money and status. was an issue. And we all went to school. And I see with myself, I wasn't as goal oriented as they were. And I think it would save me a big headache. Um, Even though we both started school around the same time, but um, I was not on a career path as she was. But I noticed the people, like the places. I know I'm kind of all over the place, but the I was meeting their friends, and I was invited once to a gathering, and these were people from. Um, they were Caucasians. They were actually they were Jewish, and back then, I mean, I was open to different people, friendships, um, and I think that was the first start of who you're going to date or socialize with. So initially, I met her from my college, but she was dating someone of the Jewish, I think it's actually from the Middle East. He had like a tan, a suntan, very good looking guy, I remember. And none of us ever went to um, ethnic places. I noticed I kind of like tagged along with them. They were more outgoing than I was. I was very shy and just kind of follow along. But I noticed race started to become an issue. Like, um, let's see, I didn't have a boyfriend at the time. And so I would pals around with them. There were two other couples. And it was, oh, that's right, it was a birthday party. Yeah, I think it was one of the two girls' birthday party, the friends that I knew. And it was very social. I think that was like the first, yes, first dinner party that I had at a restaurant. And I think that was the beginning of my socialization, really, of people outside of my race in the adult world. Uh, think, oh, let's see. So also, I started noticing different places that we go, that I would meet them at. Um, and I thought it was different. They liked country music. I was not into country music. And I noticed with them that everything had to be very focused in Eurocentricness. Um, but my being from, born and raised in the States, I didn't feel as comfortable because even though, excuse me, even though I didn't, these people were black people that the people who I knew, but everybody else other than me were all Caucasians, and they'll go to places that catered to whites at that time. Um, but you slowly started, you would, how do you say this? But my experiences were becoming more and more an issue with race. Um, like in one one environment, um, I was with a coworker, and we had gone to the village. This was he was a white fellow, but he was like I used to work at a beauty salon, and this guy was one of those gay types, and you know back then for me, people were whatever what they were. I wasn't. I just went with the flow, and this was just a coworker, and we're in the village in New York City, and someone sees me walking with this person, and assumes that this is a date of mine or something. It was just a coworker. We were just looking at some of the jewelry in the village, and they pushed him and made it look like it was an accident. Things like that happen. Um, what else? The job that I had, let's see, I had another job. Oh, yeah, my very first job actually. Um, I worked with a bunch of women, and these women, let's see, this one is more, yeah, I was the youngest one there. I was the newest, and there's all women. There were two whites, two blondes, and myself. And then they had a guy start with us. He was like a backup. He was hired as what they call provisional, and he could get let go at any time. But I was like a permanent staff, but I was still part time. And he would talk to me. I sat all the way in the back, and evidently they didn't like that he spoke to me. And I wasn't involved with him in anything. I was very, very quiet back then. And well, to make a long story short, with what happened with him, the women didn't like that he spoke to. I mean, he spoke to everybody, but he didn't like that. I mean, the ladies didn't like that. So, guess what happened? They moved me out of that office, kept him, even though he's provisional, and moved me into another department. And when I arrived at the other department, I mean, I just went with the flow. And back then, I was still like 17 years old. This was my very first job. And you didn't question things back then, you know. Um, and my new boss says, well, I don't know why they sent you here. And they had to send you here for a reason, and I don't know why. You had to do something. She was awful. A Jewish woman, Ashkenazi, and I remember, yeah, it was a mixed group. I was in the legal department, and yeah, the backup staff, support staff. Most of us were black, and then they had two other part timers. These were law students. And I remember, yeah, we all basically got along. And I was learning there. One of the girls was from the South, Virginia. And I remember I said that this was part of like my awakening about learning about racialistic talk and thinking. Um, so well, let's see what happened now. Yeah, I said something like, I used a general statement about people. Oh, people, are like this or that. I was just talking. And she says, well, what do you mean, people? What people are you talking about? There's People magazine. What are you talking about that? She's what she was doing. She was a black woman from Virginia. She was much older. She was 40 years old, about, or in her 40s, and I was like 17 or 18 by this time. And she was trying to, I would say she was the first black person that tried to wake me up about stop being generalizing and be specific that there is a white system and a black system. And so I didn't really understand what she was getting at. Part of me understood, but I didn't know why she was talking in these racialistic terms. Um, and then one day, the Jewish boys that we had, I worked in the legal department, and she referred the Jewish woman Ashkenazi Jew, referred to the black people there that worked under her as the term darky. She says, well, that's why we have the darkies here for. And I was like, wow. I knew that wasn't a nice term. I know I felt uncomfortable. I would say that was my first real um, introduction to racism. What does racism smell like? And so I had to deal with this, and I started noticing more that blacks and whites at that company were treated differently. Back then, black people were black, color wise and social economic. Yeah, it was extreme division of races. Most people of color. It was a city agency that I worked for then. My very, very first job, and you saw everything. You saw people show me their drugs, their cocaine. Um, People were alcoholics at the job, and then the whites also. They were Jewish that worked in this company. I mean, this city agency, and they all had a career path. And the career, yeah, they were all studying law actually, and the blacks were just this was going to be the job for the rest of their life, and all the blacks there seemed very depressed looking. I remember, and the whites there they only socialized with themselves basically, and they would go to the Hamptons together. That was another thing. They didn't share also. I remember. Um, they would. This was during the summer. They would go and rent a house at the Southamptons. That's the area. It was Southamptons. That's in the Suffolk County, New York, on Long Island. And I noticed they never invited us, the blacks or the other co-workers, to go with them, to invite. And why I say it like that is one of the other ladies that I worked with in my department, she was a black woman, and she invited me. She said, "Hey, we're going to such and such, to Great Adventure, and hey, you could come with us. We're going with a church group." And I just came along and invited a family member. Yeah, the distinction between blacks and whites back then, blacks in general, American blacks, they would include you in things, they invite you, and it was just hang loose, bring who you want with you. Everything was really fun and casual. And the whites, or the Jewish people in this instance, they, I mean, they weren't rude to us, the co-workers. Our boss was a racist, but she also liked black men, though. She would say things and started rubbing on this black dude that I worked with. Yeah, she would flirt with the black guy that worked in our department, but for whatever reason, she's calling us darkies, and that's why we're here to do all the grunge work. So it was mixed messages, and I was afraid of this boss because she looked like a man. She dressed, she could have actually been a tranny. Again, I was just a teenager, and I wasn't used to, things like that about transgender and stuff like that. I didn't know about things like that. I didn't know about homosexuality back then. Yeah, I was being exposed to everything, and I was afraid to ask her that I wanted to take a day off or had to go somewhere, and I was petrified of her because I didn't like how she was looking at my body, and I was just afraid of her. Or I don't know. It could have been a man. Yeah, everybody mistaken her for a man over the phone. She had a man's voice, and it looked like a man with makeup on. But either way, I don't know what it was. Um, I had gone to her boss, and the boss said, sure. And when she found out, she says, oh, you didn't come to me. And I think at that point, she decided that she was going to mess me over. And she did. Yeah, she made it that I couldn't work there again. Like I had resigned to go, because I was going to go away for school. And she had said, oh, she started to badger me at the party that I gave. I gave a going away party for myself at the, for my department. And it was very nice, very social. And I was going to go away for school. This is 2 years after working with her. And she decides, she says, well, today's your last day, you're having this party. I, I give you permission to tell me anything that you want to tell me. And, but in a negative way. So I didn't have anything to say. And so she started badgering me and badgering me. So to get her off my back, I just told her, called her the B word. Yeah, she would, and everybody like looked surprised. Then she says, "I bet you're never coming back here." That's what she wanted to do. So either way, as a law department, I know now in hindsight, with all the witnesses there, that she was badgering me, and she was telling me I could tell her anything, and I didn't have anything bad to say, and she was at my party. Why would I have anything bad to say? That is badgering, and to get my position back when if I decide to come back. But yeah, that's what happened. But I was able to come back for the summer to do a summer assignment, and that was it. But so what does it smell like? So racism back then was about saying things and not saying it specifically to some uh, individual. It went as a group. It was stereotyped, and that they kind of laugh it off. Um, what did it smell like? Also, it smelled like you don't get accepted to go to activities where whites go. Whites and blacks were separate. Even if you work with them, and even if you do the same work, you were still perceived as being beneath them. What it also looked like that one of them was like flirting with me, and so they would flirt. You just assume that they liked you, whatever. Um, they we had gone out for lunch, innocent lunch. It was nice, but when it came to going out, I said, hey, maybe we can go to the movies. And they said yes, and then they came back. They said, I think I said yes too prematurely. I have a girlfriend and blah, blah, blah. So back then, the whites or the Jewish men would flirt with black women and then say, oh, well, I have, or I'm dating someone. Now, if you're dating somebody, why were you flirting? And why, you take that for lunch? It was really weird. So it would be double messages. It was like they were interested, but they, I guess, peer pressure or whatever, they would back away. And so again, back with the the ladies that I met from college, the first friend I made in college, um, her world was very. She was designing her world to only associate with Caucasians and the places that she would go, and she eventually marries some years. I wasn't invited. Yeah, there was a break. I had moved. I had gone to away for school, and we kind of lost contact. and then I started seeing the other friend, other sibling, and we were close friends, but they were, let's see, yeah, the other sibling that I befriended, um, she also only had white boyfriends, and I felt awkward that, well, they were very possessive over her and violent. I remember one instant, um, I had met her. I think we were at the same restaurant on one occasion. They were there at the same restaurant I was eating at. I wasn't eating with them. And a waiter hands me a note, and it was a threatening note from her boyfriend, saying that if you come around us or something, if you um, he threatened to hurt me and my family. I said, "Whoa, this is sick." Yeah. And so when I brought the issue to her over the phone, I said, "Hey, I'm at the restaurant, and your boyfriend passes a note to the waiter to give me." I said, I might report this. And then she's defending him and says, "Oh, well, he has friends, and he has friends in high places, blah, blah, blah." So I noticed um, that they're willing to sacrifice their 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 friends, their black friends, over their so-called white boyfriends, and that it it, it it was separating. Life was showing me that when you choose, if you're a black person and you make a social stand on who you're going to associate with, that you have to make a choice, and that for them this was their goal. I noticed this was, yeah. Thank you for sharing that. Yeah, I know I'm kind of all over the place, but I'm really trying to, show the mindset. And then this happened many years ago. This was like, I met them 40 years ago, 40 and 37 years ago. I met them, and everything about them was Eurocentric, and I was one how where I fit in this picture, because I slowly started to feel more and more uncomfortable. And these were my so-called black friends from another country. And I guess peer pressure, that you felt that, you have to do the same, you have to get a white boyfriend. And I even toyed with the idea. But I saw with me that um, I did go out with some guys, some white guys, just once, two separate guys, two different occasions. Went out with them once, but I saw that their world and my world were different. And back then, in the early 1980s, things were very socially segregated. And even though I wanted a nice, so-called nice job, but things socially were separate. Whites and blacks did not really get along, and these two people from so-called black friends that I had made a choice to only date white men, and it was a war, because racism was speaking out to me. Uh, the relationships on jobs, how whites and blacks acted and socialized were different. And I was wondering, well, how come these so-called friends I had, why are they so comfortable? And on one occasion, I saw like the sibling that I befriended, because there were two siblings. The one I met in college, and then the other one when I went to her house, and I met her family, and I befriended their family also. Um, they always at now. She went for a job interview, and she was obviously a person of color. She was very fair skinned, and but the when the this was through a tempe I'm sorry, a an employment agency, and when the person went to, called her name to be interviewed for a position that she was applying for, the person looks at her and says, "Oh, I'm sorry, never mind." And then she went back out. She's not my friend. She assumed, I think she assumed the person was going to be a white person. And when they saw the person was a person of color, they did not consider her to be on the job. And the person had I would call it a disassociation, a mental disassociation. She couldn't deal with the realities of being rejected because of racism. And this person would pretend to be from Britain. She would put on this fake British accent. Yeah, back then in the 1980s, you had music from Britain, what they call new wave music, and everybody wanted to sound like a British person back then. It's funny when I think about it. And I remember even one occasion, we were at a department store, we were trying on clothes, this so-called friend of mine. And she's calling me in this fake British accent. And I was wondering, why is she acting this way? She's not from Britain. She did have family that lived in Britain. She would go on vacation there and back. But I was wondering, why is she acting this way? And I realized she didn't want people to know where she's actually from. And so it's always be about hiding her true identity. Yet she could pass as many different things other than what she really was. While the other sibling, she was my color, darker skin, and so we people knew we were black people. But this other sibling was um, could be many different things, and so she was getting racism, and you know she was able to date who she was dating because they didn't realize what she was. And then the job opportunities, and the jobs were, she was experiencing racism, and she told me this story. That's how I found out about it. And then me, things were, yeah, the city that I worked for, the the name calling of the blacks, um, the positions that blacks had were real. It was a big distinction, and I knew for myself. I said, I want something better in life, and I want a good job. I want to work in a nice office. Yeah. So it was very hard, and things were like, as a black woman, like sometimes they would have me work receptionist, and if a male approaches me, and just small talk, they would let me go. So it was very hard for me to keep jobs early in my life because of the being a female, being a black female, and back then, see, they there were very few blacks in private sector jobs back then. Private sector was very difficult for blacks. and obvious people of color. And so it's not that many of us to start out with. And so the black guys would see me, and it's not that many black women there. And so, you only you only could know anyone who you meet, right? So if this is the only black person in the company, whatever, and you're a guy, you want to talk. So I got that a lot. And so almost I was becoming afraid for black men to approach me because that would mean that I would get fired. So it put pressure on me in the professional world to be able to keep a job. I was friendly to everyone. I was shy, but I was polite with all people. So life was telling me and sharing me different things. The other thing with this family that I met, this black family that I met, they would go to like a church. I wasn't a religious person when I met them. Uh, I wasn't into church or anything like that. And they would go to a church. They would go to a high end white church. A place where rich white people went, and they went far out of their way to get to this church. They're from another. They had moved to another state, near New York City, but to in another one of the neighboring states. And they would drive in on Sunday to go to this church. And my friend would say, "Oh, you should come here. They got white guys here and this and that and blah blah blah." I don't think I went. If I did go, I went only once. I wasn't into church, and it was not for me. I didn't go. If I did go, I didn't go back. But everything was about going and pursuing whiteness. She graduated before I did in college, and let's see, yeah, and with me, it took me. I had to drop out of school. Yeah, because I had to find work and everything. So looking for full time work and all that, and going to school, it got compromised. So let's see. So I saw up front that the things you have to give up when you are in an interracial, at least back then in the 1980s, for black women to pursue white or Jewish men, you couldn't really have both worlds. You couldn't say, I have my black girlfriends and then I have my white or Jewish boyfriend. It You had to make a decision because you would only then go to white places that catered to whites. And on the surface, I mean, these places might look nice, but it's not. It really wasn't feasible. You couldn't really, like in New York City, people could kind of gather and talk, but when you went home and you're going out to the outer boroughs, racism was very strong. People, when you're on the train, and like at that time I lived in Queens, New York City, and especially when you got to this particular stop in Queens, I think this was Roosevelt Avenue, where much of a lot of whites lived. And slowly, more and more, it got more, how do you say, got more neighborhoody, and you were stared at if you're a person of color, and if you're standing next to a white person. This is our country. Europeans are not home. Yeah. Yeah. So so being on the train coming home from the city, like, people, there was some social, kind of talk to people in New York City, meaning Manhattan, but soon when you go to I'm sorry, Queens, Brooklyn, Bronx, you better be with your own. People stared, and you could feel the tension. Yeah, and in Queens, you could not associate with someone really outside. If you're a black person, you couldn't openly associate with a white person. You felt the stigma. So now with these two people that I knew from college and my early years in the business world, life kept on colliding with me about racism. I even worked in a beauty salon, and the things that like things also whites do not want to do black people's hair. That's what I saw also. They didn't want black people working there either. They didn't want to do their hair, and they didn't want you working there. So um, I found out at the end that they were, yeah, I was only there that place for 2 months, and they were talking behind my back. Now I was the only black woman there. There was a black man, a hairdresser there, and he was there to do like people like Diana Ross, um, who would go there. This was at the Plaza Hotel. They had a Glenby salon. That was a very high end salon, and so you would have these black celebrities like Diana Ross, whatever, and so you had to have someone who knew how to do black hair. So uh, he was an actual hairdresser. I didn't go in as a hairdresser. I was going to cosmetology school, but I came in to do nails. Back then, you didn't need a nail license. So they hired me to do basic manicures and to shampoo the people's hair. And so that's what I did. And I did that because I wanted to find out whether I would like the business or not. Yeah, I was that type of person. I was going to, by this time, I changed schools and I decided to go into the uh, cosmetology school. You learn about beauty, hair care, nails, skin, and all that. And I wanted to see if I would like it. And the school that like I found out about the school through this so-called friend of mine who lived not too far from the school, and they had invited. She had to get her hair done, and I think the guy might have just assumed maybe she was Hispanic or something. Um, and the guy was the owner of the salon, and he was an Italian fellow. I thought he was an East Indian guy because his skin was dark. But no, he was an Italian that got a suntan, Italian or Sicilian. And then he says, I was just accompanying this so-called friend, and he says, oh, well, I can't do this with your hair because your hair is different. And my hair was not that different than hers. My friend relaxed her hair, and my hair was more natural. Yeah, I think yeah, my hair was more natural than her, and she relaxed her hair often. He said she was getting her hair colored, and with what they call it, a cellophane. And he said to me, "Oh, people like you, we have a black division upstairs, and all the black people have to go upstairs because the fumes and everything, the black hair products and the white hair products, um, it doesn't mix well, and so we have the black people go upstairs to get their hair done. But she could come down here and do her hair because she's different." And I'm looking at the guy, and I found this very, very humorous because he doesn't realize this friend of mine is a black girl and just assumes that she's something else. And our hair texture really wasn't that different. I just didn't, uh, my hair wasn't as used to being processed like her. Yeah, my hair was relaxed, but it was kind of bushy. But basically, we basically had the same hair type, but see perceptions. And so, uh, why would he have me up to go upstairs to get my hair done if I'm just getting my hair colored? She had her hair relaxed, and that chemical could have reacted with her hair and it fall out. See, that's what racism smells like. Racism says, and tries to disguise itself based on your looks, based on what they perceive what your race is. And back then they said, okay, um, we have a salon and it's in a very diverse neighborhood, and but I'm going to keep it segregated so I can continue getting my white customers, and the blacks that live in the neighborhood, we're going to have them go upstairs. So it was so that whites don't have to see black people. Why didn't they have the white people go upstairs and have it set up that way? See, it's about um, showing favoritism and hiding black people. So all these things that I experience, some of it overtly racist, and some of it, hidden. But I knew that this doesn't sit right. So in getting, trying to combine, I know I said a lot of things, and I really hope you understand where I'm coming from. That what racism smells like. That it gives, it could hide itself or manifest itself in social circumstances when you have to work next to them, I found, or when you're getting, like, whites didn't want to touch you, you know. Um, and your hair could be, um, just getting your hair colored, not getting relaxed or anything like that. They didn't want to touch your hair. Or they said, oh, yeah, also at that time, I wanted to get my hair colored. Um, and we had a hair colorist there. This was what you call a white salon, and white salons do hair coloring, hair coloring, hair coloring. They specialize in the white salon. These so-called upper end salons, they have a lot of specialties. And so it was an older white lady who was a colorist. And someone said a joke about some, hey, so and so, why don't you color somebody's hair? Because they're black or something. You're not going to do something. And she reacted, and she started yelling and said, well, so and so should do her hair because he knows more about her hair type. But he wasn't a hair colorist, and she was. Okay, so it was really interesting. Yeah, I see that people just dropped the line. Yeah, yeah, the viewership, it had a number, then it went to zero. That's interesting. So here I get more specific about the what does racism smell like, and people don't like when I told the truth. Very interesting. So yeah, so um, she got aggressive, and she didn't want to color my hair, even though she's a hair colorist and other stuff. And so if they thought you were another ethnic group and light enough, they would do your hair. Even doing my nails, I went to get the same place to get my nails done. And all of a sudden the same thing about getting the nails done by this white person from Russia. And she would say, oh, you know, people with your hands, you have this extra skin, extra cuticle around your nails, and white people don't have that, and blah blah blah. I don't care what white or black people have with it. Just your manicures, just do my nails. So whites were taught, they didn't feel comfortable in catering or pampering black people. That's another thing what racism smells like. So they didn't want to touch your hair or do your hair, and even doing your nails. Something as neutral as your hands do a manicure was an issue for them. Yeah, and she was the better of the two uh, nail technicians. Yeah, she was considered a very good nail technician, and but she made an issue when I wanted to get my nails done. So fast forward now. So the so-called friends that I had back then, they were blacks, but one of them looked different, and the other ones were obviously black. And their parents um, encouraged them to what you call marry up. And I felt badly for the because the father was a very hardworking guy. I'm not going to mention who you know, but he was a black man. The mother wasn't black though. The mother was a person of color, but not a black person. Father was, and that was also I think part of the problem. But the father was a very hard-working black man. I had respect for him because he was a hard-working man, but felt badly that he encouraged them to, you know, I mean, if you're the head of your household, he was the breadwinner of the family. You know, the mother didn't work; she was a housewife, and you're a black man working hard. And I saw that, and I saw that they didn't really. I felt they didn't really respect the father. Um, they wouldn't call him by his. They wouldn't call him dad, but by his first name. And I never heard of anything like this. So it's like you like distancing yourself from the man that's raising you, the breadwinner, and all that. And so this had a lasting impression on me. This was a lasting impression that here you work hard, and you have people go out their way to go to white establishment to date people that really didn't respect your culture, who you were, and you had to give up your culture for them. One of them that married eventually, yeah, I had moved away when she had married. Um, yeah, I don't know what year she married, but at that time I wasn't in her circle. Um, oh, what's that now? Yeah, she. Oh, I'm sorry. Sometimes I forget what I was saying. But yeah, she married, but she had to get. Oh, I remember what it was. Um, Now she had graduated with her undergraduate, and the guy that she was, they had moved in together. I was told, and the guy says, "For you to be with me, you have to get your master's if you're going to be with me." Now she had already got her undergrad, and when was still friends with her, she was actually taking you know, post undergrad classes. So yeah, she was working towards her master's degree. So I didn't know why he gets so defensive. Yeah, that's the other lesson that I learned in knowing these people that sh- that with some he was a Jewish man. He was a lawyer actually, and he was much older than her. And I'm thinking, wait a minute, you're the man. I'm saying to myself now, you're a man, and you have to demand that she has to live with you and to consider marriage. She has to get another degree. But look at this in comparison. Remember that guy that he was a golfer? Oh, Tiger Woods. Remember Tiger Woods? He's a multi millionaire. And you know what they set him up with? A babysitter, a white babysitter. You remember that? A white babysitter. Did she have a college degree? Did she have anything? And this guy is a multimillionaire, known all around the world. Remember that? They marry. Did he require her to get a, a college degree of any level? Nothing. So, but my friend, so-called friend, who you know, when she met him, she had a college degree, her undergrad, and then for her to demand that she get, so they're about status. I'm noticing with Ashkenazi Jews, um, that you to be around them, you had to have status. You had to have a degree, and you had to live in certain neighborhoods. Almost forgot something. The guy that we went out for lunch on the job, and then we were to go to a movie. Then he says, "Oh well, I got a girlfriend. I can't go out with you." Now, why is he flirting with me, and doing all that, and then I changed my mind. My girlfriend. So, what's the point about that? Yeah. Something. Yeah. Years later, after that incident, I just so happened to move into this neighborhood in Queens, nearer to the city, and I would get out the subway and I see this guy that looked just like this person that I knew from my past. And wow, so I thought it was just my imagination. It turned out it was him. Guess what happened? Yeah, with him. Yeah, something else. Yeah, I'm not going to go into details about that, but uh, but to stress about status. He was just so happened to be moving when I learned that he lived in my neighborhood, just maybe 1 or 2 blocks away from where I lived. That he was moving, and he was telling me his decision was they were trying to decide, he and his wife, his now wife, were deciding what house they were going to move into. And they said either Long Island or this place. Um, he was a fan of the Rolling Stones, the rock band. He decides, oh, we're going to move over to Connecticut because the so and so from the Rolling Stones lives over there. So everything was based, again, status, to be around people that lift that make you look a certain way. And that was my experience with people from that background. That it was about living and moving and being around people who were something, a celebrityism, and it was really something. So, what does this have to do with now, though? Okay, now all these things I remember, and I just so happened to find out in social media about these two former friends of mine. And guess what happened? Well, the one that I initially met 40 years ago, she has children, at least, I think, at least 2 children, and one of them has uh, a condition. Um, they are severely autistic, and they're on YouTube. Uh, a, like a mini documentary was made on them, and I felt badly for her. And I'm listening to her. I said, I know her. I said, I recognize her. Her kid is severely autistic, and I remember all the things that everything about her was status, about who you're going to associate with, and that you have to marry up and you have to live in certain places. Um, I think financially she did well. She and her husband. And I don't know whether they're still married together, but I think economically she did very well. And so, despite all the wealth that she has, and despite that, she thought marrying a a a a Jewish man was going to, happy ever after. That and how she started to mistreat some of her friends of color. She became horrible. And she was changing. She was not acting very nicely. Um, and then I see this, and I said that like that karma hit her hard, and that some things you cannot run away from. That when you mistreat people, mistreat your friends, and thinking you've made it because who you'd married to or the neighborhood that you live in. And then something like this happens. And she was extremely judgmental against me. And it was like, wow. One thing she's learning to that not everybody has the, you know, fancy veneer that you never know what life is going to present you. And it's something you cannot really hide from people. And so everything with her was to about hiding about certain things. Um, and it hit her. So she has to learn about patience now and not judging and then realizing that people can judge her. And that's what I got from when I saw the video with her. She was playing with her son, playing ball and interacting. I was happy for her that, she is provided for us financially and that she is humbled now uh, that she cannot judge people now. But on an up note, though, regarding the son knows how to play music now, and so now she showcases her son with autism, and he can play music well, and so now she's able to live through her son, through him being able to play music and to showcase him. So it worked out, so it's a bittersweet thing. And as for other sibling that I knew uh, of hers, um, she also married, and I she it was almost embarrassing. This other one, um, she couldn't cope with racism, and she 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 developed some type of mental illness, and she had typed something um, on her Facebook account. She has several accounts on Facebook with different names. Some of them were linked to her main account, I guess, her main Facebook account. She had written something that say that she has a mental illness and other stuff, and it made no sense what she was saying, and it was obviously someone that suffers from severe mental illness. Uh, some of the things that are on her Facebook account, like things that she likes to watch or something, or like demonic stuff. And it scared me. And this was someone who I knew. And so the last time I spoke to her was many years, maybe 30 years ago. And I think it manifested that there was a problem with her mentally when uh, I called her from, I used to live in the Caribbean, and oh no, no, yeah, I was in the Caribbean, and I came back to New York to live. And I hooked her up, I had a number still. I said, hey, let me call if so and so's still around, since I was back in New York City. And it was bizarre and very bizarre conversation. She sounded paranoid, and that she couldn't talk on the phone. That I must go over to where she is, and blah blah blah. It was bizarre. I didn't go over. I stayed at home. Why should I have to go out of my way and go take like 2 hours to get there? No, I could talk to her on the phone. It was weird. It was very bizarre. So with her, that even though she thought she got what she wanted, a uh, Caucasian, her denying and not accepting what she was and uh, trying to disguise what she was. She would disguise herself of her identity by putting on a fake accent, or say she's from another place where I know, you know, and she wanted me to like believe her. It was really weird. And it was all about racism and about being accepted by them. And she developed, uh, I mean, I'm not a psychiatrist, so I cannot um, say what she is, what diagnosis, but something really. Oh, I almost forgot. Remember when I said earlier with when she went for a job interview, and when they thought it was a white person to be a white person, and then they walked away and said, "Oh, I'm sorry, never mind," and they didn't interview her for the position. She shared with me that everything. Yeah, yeah, exactly. I'm glad of my color. Yeah. Yeah, she did it. She had very pale skin, almost white in color. Oh, so what happened to her? Um, she said that everything went in slow motion and that the mouth of the person went in slow motion. Like it's a type of disassociation when something like that happens. When you can't cope with stress and everything slows down and you move in slow motion, the person slow, everything. It's a mental. I talked to this therapist about that once. They said that's a. I just say, hey, if that something such happens to someone, what's that mean? If that's someone with severe mental illness. Yeah. So it was a sign that she suffered from mental illness. She did have a head injury once as a child, but it it coming in coming to the U.S. and living here and dealing with racism in New York City and its hidden forms. It's overt and covert um, behaviors. So I'm happy for myself. I think I'm doing this video as that sometimes people think that they're getting something wonderful, that life would be perfect, or that it doesn't exist. Racism does exist. But as I said in the very beginning of this video, that to withstand, if you are a foreigner coming into America, uh, to help you overcome the sting of racism, to have a network of people from where you're from to uh, work together as a support group. And if you don't, what could happen? That bad things could happen. Because you don't stop being a black person because you marry a white person or you live in a white neighborhood. In fact, the woman that has the child that suffers from severe autism, uh, from she married a white Jewish fellow. Um, what could happen? Yes, she shared also on social media that I assume it's a different son was playing I think it was hockey, some type of field, game, and that their team won. My former friend's son and the team that he's on won the game. And what happened was the other team, that the team that lost, started calling him the N word. Yeah, get this. Calls him the N word. Now this person's been in this country for over 40 years, and this was something that happened recent. I think last year. Yeah, it happened last year in 2019. And that she says that, yes, I was very outgoing, and I mean that she was outgoing and very, um, you know, assertive about things, but she didn't know how to assert herself in that racist incident when it happened. She did discuss it with the what do you call it, the coach of the other team, to have the coach discuss the matter with the other team that called bad words. Yeah. So she lives in, I think, a predominantly white neighborhood, a very white school system in another state. They don't live in New York City. They don't live in New York at all. And I'm baffled that she's lost for words, living here for over 40 years. Oh, she responded in writing, in her social media, that she says, how could he say something like that if the guy only knew who her father was? I mean, who the boy's father was. And I took that as that she didn't get it. How I took it was that if the people knew that the boy's father was white, that they wouldn't call him the N word. And she's far mistaken. She doesn't get it. And many people from other countries, blacks from other countries who come to the U.S., um, that we mistaken that when we so-called move up the social ladder, or we get in an interracial relationship, or you have a biracial child for that relationship, that your kids will be perceived as both being mixed and no longer black. Wrong. That um, what that taught me was what happened to my friend's son was that when a black person, even though they might be of mixed heritage, when they outdo a white man, that's when their racism, more overt racism, comes out. That all of a sudden you're the N word. They don't like it. They don't like you winning over them. And so what happened, to assert their white manhood, they say racist things. This also reminds me of Candace Owens, who will in the future be running for um, government office. And she already made mention that she's interested in the White House in a video. So Candace Owens is a black American woman, and she had an incident that happened to her when she was dating this white fellow, and they had broken up, and he had his white friends call her. Okay, she's part Caribbean. Yeah, yeah. Thanks, Kim. Yeah, she's part Caribbean. Um, the father's. Oh, what's that? Her father's. I'm sorry. Her mother. Yeah, her mother. Her mother's mother was it? Her grandmother is from St. Thomas, but the grandfather is from the American South. He's a black American. I do not know about her father's though. What background her father is. I don't know whether he's West Indian, but the mother is half American black and half West Indian black. But yes, so with Candace, I thought you were mixed. How do you identify? Yeah, my back. Yeah, yeah. Yeah, I am of mixed heritage genetically. Both of my parents are of black heritage, but my mother looks very Caucasian. And yes, I thought she was a white person growing up. Again, with children, I lived in a black neighborhood, but when we initially moved in, um, our immediate neighbor was black, but it's predominantly all black. When we moved into a house that was owned by a white fellow, white uh, doctor, and they moved to Long Island, and my parents bought the house. But it was a black neighborhood, but within like 3 years after we moved in, it was all black. Um, and again, I didn't question what my race was. You know, I have parents, I have siblings. It was very confusing to me. I identify as a black woman, uh, but I am of mixed heritage. I did get a DNA. See, there's two different things. There's, what do you call it? See, there's race. There's, there's, how do you say it? There's social identity meaning what you're raised in. People could be raised in one social group over another, and then there's your biology, what genetics you have. So socially, I was raised as a black person, black woman, uh, but I am aware. I think on my journey, my racial journey, um, I've been aware of how people who may look one way or who are aware of their mixed roots but experience racism. Okay, if that makes any sense. I hope I answered your question. Yeah, you can ask me questions. Yeah, you're free. All of you are free to ask questions because this is also to share my experiences, and I would say my experiences was to read was a lesson to learn to accept yourself, and that's the first thing I said in this video because I know I'm very long-winded. And sometimes it takes me a while to get to the point that I need to say. And so in the beginning, I said that people have to network with their own, love themselves. Um, yeah. Um, and I think know your culture. See, sometimes like the yeah. Thanks me for answering. My daughter is of mixed race. Okay. She see yes. As I see as a black. Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. Thank you for sharing that. Yeah. So I do this video really as a wake up call that, see, a lot of, especially people from, see, I'm not here to insult anybody. You know, we all have our own experiences and journey. But I find that um, people from the Caribbean, racism is extreme in the West Indies, or I should say, colorism, racism. Again, the West Indies was built by slavery. Overwhel- Overwhelming number of people that live in the Caribbean are all descendants of slavery. And yes, some islands are more mixed with European than black, but still, their ancestry is stemmed from racism. And so, to control the slaves, whether they're mixed race or pure African, you had to have very strong oppression over them to control them. Okay, so it's overwhelmingly black. How are you going to control if the majority are black? Oppression and coercion and the desire to be white or the desire to move up socially is very, very strong. And so a lot of my videos, I expose that. And some people got offended about some of the things that I said, but it was not designed to offend, but to a wake up. like some islands in the Caribbean where you have a lot of racial mixing, that they no longer consider themselves black. And again, that's their choice, but how they may treat people who are classified as black, that they may not like to be around us. Um, what else? Or like the so-called friends that I had from, yeah, they were actually from the Caribbean, and I won't say where they're from. Um, and they're a hard-working family. They were very focused. Why they did relatively well was that they were career-oriented when they came to the U.S. They knew they didn't want poverty. Where they're from in the Caribbean is very very poor, and so back then in the 70s and 80s, there were opportunities for newcomers into the U.S., and they took advantage of that. They went all the way with it. So I commend them that they were focused. They knew they didn't want poverty, and they did anything it took to move ahead. And there was another sibling of theirs. She also married a Jewish guy, and before they married, I was when I was still friendly with the family. They were having a lunch or something there. They made some homemade hors d'oeuvres. It was really nice. And the guy said something. He says, "Oh, um, is that ethnic food?" And he started smirking. And the girl got offended. And I'm listening. And I knew the guy was from, he was born here, that Jewish guy. And I had met him once before. And then this time, I knew what he was getting at. And I said, "Boy, you dating this type of guy? He doesn't like your ethnicity? He's making fun of your food?" Yeah, so that was a wake up call also, that even though you could be dating or to marry um, a white person or a Jewish person, that they may still have biases against the ethnic group that you belong to. I mean, sometimes people just tease one another, but it's what he was really about. And he may have been, they do have one child together, and he may have molested the daughter that they had. That was another thing um, that came to me. I mean, that I was told something about them by one of the siblings there. Okay. Yeah, Camp, what nationality are you, Camp? What nationality are you? Yeah. So all these things. Oh, okay. Okay, wonderful. Thank you for answering that, Camp. Yeah. So so all these things that I learned, that I was exposed to by this family that I knew. Yeah, they were a Caribbean family, and they were of both people of color, but one was black, and the other one was a different race, but not white. And yeah, they I mean, they worked really hard, but they sacrificed their own culture for to be liked by somebody else, and that somebody else may not respect them, and that somebody else could develop. For you to not accept yourself could eventually lead you to mental illness. So that's my point in all this. I know it took, I see it took 94 minutes to get to this point, but some things, um, it comes in layers, what I'm saying. Uh, it's, you really have to, okay, lions don't hang out with tigers. That's cute. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So you have to you have to like yourself. See, no matter who you date, whether you marry outside of your race or within your so-called race, you have to love yourself. You have to love your genetics. You have to love the person you see in the mirror, because when that time happens, when you go in for a job interview and they thought the person was going to be of a particular race, and when they see it's not of the race that was, yeah, because some jobs in New York City is designated for certain races, and that's another story. I may have already shared that with you months ago. Yeah, I had, yeah, real quick, I had a relative, a black relative. She's a light-skinned black, and she was in a position to hire people at a company. And so she had hired someone who she thought could do the job. It was a person of color. And they got angry that she presented this person to be considered for the position. And also she shared that there was like a like when a job has to be filled, they write like the criteria for the job, and then they put a code on this form. And the code means what race the person is, or what they have to fulfill. So it specified indirectly, it's stealth, that the person had to be a particular race for the job. So she found out about that because she had uh, was getting backlash over hiring this person. The person was a Hispanic, and she thought the person could do the job. And this relative is very open about race. She's a very fair person. She's about putting in people who can do the job. But the whites at the company didn't want her, didn't want didn't want that. She was, see, some white people assume that when you get accepted in that job, you still have to maintain white status, to uphold whites at the company. So you only have and fill the position people of that race. And when she didn't do that, what was expected of her, she didn't know that was expected of her. And she learned, but this form, she later, analyzed this form because it was something, I forget the details, but she found out that this code on this form that was to fill out was meant of to diagnose to tell what race the person is to be for that job. So yes, even though this happened many years ago, this individual was telling me the story. They told me this story recently, but the incident happened many years ago, and she got fired. Yeah, they gave her a hard time, and then they fired her, or that she was forced to resign because of the pressure of her wanting to hire people of different color and race. So, yeah, you have to work together, whatever what group you live among, you have to work together because they are working against you, and they are covering it up by codes on forms. Um, you go in for the interview, and they say, uh, one moment, please, and then they don't come back out. And so, if you're not, if your skin is, if you're thin skinned, it's going to affect you. Like this person that I know, and she's now on social media with about 4 or 5 different aliases, talking about weird things, very bizarre, because she is suffering from mental illness. But again, she did have a head injury as a child, and that could have contributed to her mental illness. But I think racism and not being born here and then being put looking like one thing, but you're something else, and so you hear all the racist talk from others, and like the hairdresser. Like me and this girl, we went to a hair to get a she went to get a hair done. I was just accompanying her, and the Italian or Sicilian guy says, "Oh well, we don't do blacks up here. We do them upstairs. We keep them blacks and whites separate." And made excuse that the fumes in the air of the different chemicals isn't good. This is bullshit. Bullshit. See, that's what racism smells like in America. So, so those of you, so at the race question that I share, like with my background, my personal background, um, I would say if I were to have a child, um, let's say I adopt a child, let's say I adopt a mixed race child, black and white background, like my own, um, I would tell them, I said, there's two different things. There's what social group you belong to, and then what genetics you have. I would say embrace all your genetics because your genetics is in your body, and you have to be in harmony with your body, and to love your body and love the person in the mirror. And then there's social, the social relationship with others that despite one's racial mixture, uh, you are basically what people perceive you as. And so um, if they perceive you as a black person, definitely you are black socially. Yeah, so there's two different things. And whatever what group you are assigned to socially, just know that the different rules behind it. But regardless of what rules, you have to do things that you can live with. That because see, down the road, we're all human beings. In a nutshell, we're all human beings, and one day you may fall. Just like the siblings that I knew. I mean, not my siblings, but the siblings that I knew, and how that they thought living a particular lifestyle amongst white people, that they're going to be liked by white people. And here, one of them, in an incident that happened just last year, being called the N word, and here she's saying, yes, exactly, we are all human beings. Yes, we are all human beings, and we all live and we all die. But I say, live in integrity. You have to live in integrity because um, this is all a social, this is all a show. This is like, like Shakespeare, that life is a show. This is just a play. We all play parts. And sometimes we think these plays are so real. It seemed very real to me growing up. Racism was real to me. And initially, I didn't understand what racism was, but I smelt it. I felt it. I did not have the words for it originally because I didn't understand what was happening. And again, my background is not from the South. I'm from the North, born in the North. My parents are born in the North, but my grandparents, they are from the Caribbean. And again, Caribbean people coming over, they have a different mindset, different, you know, when you live in the West Indies, it's a different type of racism, if that makes sense. It's a, because everybody there is people of color, people from the history of slavery, but how they deal with their past is could be harsh. Yeah, they're very the people from the West Indies that I've met are very progressive. They want to move up. They want to everybody wants to get ahead in the West Indies. So I find that, I know I'm getting a little bit off the topic, but what my observant was when I lived in the Caribbean, that people from neighboring islands who moved to St. Thomas did better than people who were, there generationally, you know? So same as in America, those who are from somewhere else do better than the people here generationally. So even like myself, I wasn't physically born on that island, but I did better than those, job-wise, than those who were born there and lived there generationally. And so there are jealousies, but whether you're born here or born there, if you're a white person in either place, whether in the a white person, non-Hispanic, living in the West Indies, or a white person in the United States and America, non-Hispanic, um, do better in general. And so because of that, that social dynamic, whether you're mixed race, um, you have to give them their history. So if it's a black and white family, you have to equip the kid, in my opinion, of their black heritage to let them understand socially the history. But see, you can overcome. I like to believe you can overcome racism by having your own, having your own company. And now with things like social media or YouTube, you have people who could start their own business. You can make money on YouTube. And you have people, black people, who can make a lot of money on YouTube. So that is empowering. So in my day, just starting out 40 years ago, people went to a so-called job or an employment agency to get a job, and most of the people at the employment agencies were all white. And so you're being they're telling you what jobs you can apply for. And the very first job that I got, non-government, I should say a private sector job, it was at a bank, a very leading bank. And I saw an ad in this Sunday New York Times. And that Monday, I went to the company, brought my resume, and I said, "Oh, I'm responding to this job that I saw in the ad." And it was a black man working in this human resources. I remember him. So a slim black guy says, "Oh, hey, maybe you might like this job. Let me show you to this department instead." So I just went with the flow. But I realize now as an adult, he knew certain jobs were designated for white people. Just like my relative who learned the hard way when you're filling a spot that some jobs are exclusively to be white and others could be mixed. The mixed group include white women, black, male and female, Hispanics, Asians, everything else. Okay, that's how it was. And there were unwritten laws. And so now with social media, you could empower yourself. You don't have to rely on white people or any race, and that you can learn a skill. And I also advise that don't be intimidated. See, I was a very shy girl growing up. When I was a teenager in early 20s, I was very timid and afraid. And I let people intimidate me at that time. And so now I say, teach, any biracial kids out there listening, or parents of biracial kids, teach them a skill, a marketable, teach them how to type so they know the keyboard. You can always get a job with a key, if you know how to type and type well. Um, teach them that because let's say they want to do computer, do YouTube or other social media things, to know the keyboard. That's a very valuable skill. Um, Teach them their history, let them network, try to have them find other people of similar backgrounds. Let's say um, someone whose heritage, let's say they're mixed heritage, that they network and find other people with a similar background as a support, as a support to uh, associate with, so they don't feel alone. Because it is going to be a lonely feeling when you're not connected with other people. Um, yeah, I think I already said learn your history. Learn the history, what happened here in the U.S. Learn about it so you understand that the social dynamics. Being from the West Indies and coming here is confusing socially. It confuses many of the blacks here. Because again, blacks from other parts of the world, they only see what's on TV and they think, oh, this is the land of the free. And they take it literally. And so it confuses them about race. People outside of the US, they don't identify by race. They identify by nationality. Nationality and race are two separate things. And so it could confuse a lot of people from other nationalities who so happen to be black. So fortify with the history of where they come from and the history of America, and to learn as much as you can about others and yourself, so that when racism spikes its head up, that they are better equipped and better fortified, and that to prepare for it. Because just because let's say you graduate from a prestigious college, there's a lot of racism in these colleges, in Ivy League schools. I had a person from high school who went into Harvard, and uh, when she went on, when she did graduate and she got her master's from the same college, um, yeah, they called her the N word. Yeah. So just because someone is of a, let's say, a, what do you call it, a higher end. See, right now racism is disguising itself. And like you have Candace Owens. Now I had liked Candace Owens, the black woman who is a um, black conservative. But I'm concerned about certain things. Like, again, I was um, impressed with her presentation and everything. Um, but now I'm having other thoughts. I think the black conservative movement is, um, can, how do you say, they're convincing themselves that you could make certain, yeah, you can make it in life, but there are oppositions. And black people going ahead, you're going to find opposition, that people who you thought were your friends, whether white or black, are going to try to prevent you. So that's why you have to really love yourself and love the person in the mirror, because uh, black men especially are not encouraged to want to succeed in life outside of football, basketball, things like sports. It's okay to be a black person and want to be a sports person or a singer. But when you have to work in an office, that is the key thing. When you want to work in an office, in a business, that's when you're really going to have opposition. So, yeah, that your child could desire to uh, be a base, sports, but if they desire to work in an office, to have a business, you better equip them with every tool for them to um, really have knowledge. and support. You have many people, it seems like now with the black conservative movement, that if you really analyze them and watch who they befriend, very few of them have black people in their circle. One person who I'm not going to mention by names about these other people. Um, when they got married, they had a white person as their best man, um, and he's making a lot of money. Another person uh, mentioned that he has a business, but he doesn't hire black people. Or he specified they're all Mexican. So it seems like black people, when they want to move up, they're denying themselves, they're denying their circle of other blacks because, see again, like my two so-called friends, yeah, they go up, they thought they move up the ladder, and then boom, life happens, and it's a horrible feeling when you feel you're disconnected. Because their whole lives are based on this lie, or I should say distortion. So it's okay to be a black conservative, but being black conservative doesn't mean that you have to deny having black friends, and that not all whites are your friend. If you support their causes and their communities, no problem. It's when you speak out on certain truths that have happened, like let's say a racial incident, and soon when you make mention of that incident, you're no longer going to have those same white friends. They're going to stop being around you. And that's my experience. Oh, that's my little doggy. Yeah. Yeah, she's saying, hey, mommy, you're on the internet too long. Yeah, I'll be right there. I'll be right there. Okay, yeah. So I know I said a lot of things, and I hope what I said makes a lot of sense. And that you choose your friends wisely, but especially if your friend is from a different uh, background, and if something happens to your race, the likelihood of them staying with you is greatly the chance of it dissolving is the case. So I thank you all for listening. And yes, we're all human beings having we are spiritual beings having a human existence. And in this holographic world, we're going to experience things and know that, it is just a show, but learn from it and keep your ground, keep focus, and to love yourself. Thank you again for listening and for your feedbacks. Peace, love, and joy. Hug yourself, hug that person in the mirror, and know that you are important no matter what group you belong to. Bye bye.